And we're here with Conor Ryan. Conor, what is up?
Evan, I'm doing okay. I'm fighting a cold, flu, something like that. So I am gutting through it. It's what most of my holiday weekend was. But I am here, recording the pod. I'm happy to be here. How you doing?
I'm doing better. I feel bad saying that, but it is true. I just landed from Atlanta, so I'm right off the flight. That's why we're recording this like late at night, as you can tell. It is dark behind me, but had a fun time in Atlanta. Got to see the NHL on TNT studios and work there and go to a Braves game and do kind of all the Atlanta things. I will disappoint you, Conor, though. There's one thing I didn't have the chance to do. There's one thing.
One thing I asked you to do, Evan. It's one thing I asked you.
I didn't get to go to Waffle House.
You're killing me.
I didn't get to go. And I'll tell you why. I worked every day, 8 to 4. And then at night would all go do things. And then I'd have to get back up. So Waffle House.
That's when you go to Waffle House. You go at 4 a.m.
I know. But I didn't get to do it. That was the one thing. That was my one regret.
More reason to go back.
That's my one regret. Didn't get to hit Waffle House, unfortunately. But yes, good times in Atlanta, fun times. Very fun city. You've been, I had never, but it was a really great time. Nice area, a lot of cool spots. And the Braves was very fun. So good times, good times. One piece of Bruins news broke, I think, as I was getting on the plane, or right after I had landed, and I said, "Oh, great! I can't wait for the Bruins to have something really major happen," and I'm just down there, or whatever. With that, but Brad Marchand out for 6 months due to undergoing an arthroscopy and labral repair on both hips. As you can tell, I have not said that out loud since that news broke.
Boy, we don't get paid the big bucks, Evan. We're not doctors here.
We're not the doctors. We're just here to report what's happening. Recovery is 6 months. That's not great. That's really not great. And when you think about the prospect of Patrice Bergeron potentially retiring, and you would start the season without those two, that's really bad.
It's not great, Evan. No, and it's one thing where I think people were expecting Marchand was going to miss some time this offseason with some sort of procedure. He talked about the fact that he had an AC joint injury, which he got, I think, from that Hathaway hit. You look at Sweeney mentioned the fact that they might have to address the hip surgery, whether it be this offseason or the next summer. So if you're the Bruins, yeah, it's tough hit. Obviously, it's something that's necessary if it has to be done. I mean, when you mentioned 2 procedures on 2 different hips at the same time, quite the uphill climb in terms of coming back from that. But obviously, something that was clearly bothering him. You hope that it's kind of a similar situation as that sports hernia surgery he had, where it was something that was plaguing him for years and years, and it, eventually he benefits from it. But I don't know, man, hip surgeries, those are the scary ones. It's almost like when you see, in basketball, a guy who's been at an elite level for a while, and then all of a sudden it's like a Achilles or a knee injury or something like that. And that's not to say that their careers are over. And if anyone wouldn't surprise me in terms of bouncing right back, it'd be a guy who takes care of his body and works out like crazy, like Marchand. But still, you don't want to see your 33, 34-year-old, franchise winger have, 2 hip surgeries in the span of a day. The same day, more or less, right? So definitely concerning if you're the Bruins. And yeah, they're already kind of in a tough spot going into the year where you don't know what's happening with Bergeron. But if he's not in the picture and Marchand's out until Thanksgiving, early December, Bruins are going to find some other areas to generate some offense, because could be a rough go of it, especially in the first months of next season.
I mean, it's May right now, right? So you got to think May, June, July, August, September, October. You also have to consider he needs to have some kind of a training camp. It's not like he just is like, oh, he's healthy, let's start playing him in games. It feels like this could be something like November that he comes back from, and you start to think ahead and go, okay, well, can they sustain themselves offensively without him? That we won't know that until the off season is complete. So again, really tough blow in that regard. I guess good to see it maybe get fixed, but as you said, it's not a surgery that it's not like a broken arm where it's like, oh, you're good now. Oh, that's great. That's a hip. You need those to skate. Very much so. Today we are doing end of season player grades. We are handing out our grades. We are the teachers. We're the professors sitting here handing out end of season grades. Is the only grades that matter. You have something coming soon for BS. You just released your grades, correct, for BSJ, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes, I released forwards over the weekend, and then we'll have defensemen and coaches and upper management will be coming out on Tuesday. So when this podcast drops,
this will include players. I did not include coaches or general managers and front office people. I didn't include that. But we'll go kind of first line, second line, third line, fourth line, and then we'll go D. Goalies. We'll kind of run through it. And this is always fun. I don't remember what our grades were for everybody last year. It'd be interesting to kind of compare them. But for now, we got our grades for right now. So we'll start with the first line of Marchand, Bergeron, Debrusk. I gave Marchand an A. I think he had a good season, for what you expected out of him, what you got. Good season. Nothing wrong with that. I give him an A. Patrice Bergeron, I also give an A, right? I consider his age as a factor. I consider that he will most likely win his 5th Selke this season. Good all around with him. Nothing that was bad. A+. I think A+ is like just you go to another level of elite. Yeah. And Marchand and Bergeron were amazing, but I would not sit here and be like, oh, they were so much better than they've ever been. Jake Debrusk, this was a tougher one. Gave a B+. I gave Jake Debrusk a solid B+, because I consider the first half of the year kind of not so great. And then after the trade request, he actually was pretty resilient. And after that contract extension, he was pretty resilient. And again, he produced for you in the playoffs. So for me, I give him a B+. Now, what would you give the guys on the first line?
Yeah, I give Bergeron an A. I think, as you said, I think it will be a crime and be just an unbearable stretch of the offseason if Bergeron does not win that 5th Selke. I mean, it's whether it's the eye test of just, seeing how great he is at disrupting plays, intercepting passes, all that stuff, or the underlying numbers, which if you want to delve into that, he had like one of the best seasons like defensively from a forward since I think it was Zetterberg in 2007 in terms of I think goals, above, goals, expected goals against in terms of what his numbers were. So you factor in that, you factor in the fact that he's still 60 plus points in 70 games. Just another fantastic year for him. So I go with an A for Bergeron, who, if he does hang up his skates this summer, it's not going to be because his game is tailing off. He's still one of the best and should win that 5th Selke. Marchand, I'm going to give an A-. Okay. If you asked me, in the first half of the year, going into January, I'd probably give him an A+ because he was, without a doubt, I think their MVP in that first half, kind of their sole kind of conduit of offense in terms of what you're expecting. Second half, bit tougher. And whether that's the injuries adding up, you had the suspensions, which again, kind of surprised with how severe they were, but also some of those ones where you just can't be putting yourself in that spot. I mean, there was some times where, when he was out of commission, they were really struggling to kind of string together points. And that's not to say that, every point doesn't matter, but you look at kind of how this first round went up against Carolina. If anything could have been different of who they seeded or what have you, kind of those lulls when Marchand was out of commission, kind of, you look back on them now and be like, we could have really used him for some of those stretches there where points were available. So, but again, still look at his overall point production and what he means to this team, two-way play. He's still an elite first line talent. So A- for me. And then like you, I gave Debrusk a B+. As you said, held up his end of the bargain in terms of running with that opportunity on the top line, becoming one of the few kind of consistent even strength scorers. But that first half, again, whether it's the public trade request, not talking about it, just the lack of set production, where it looked like the struggles from 2020, 2021 were carrying over once again. Kind of hurts his grade a little bit, but again, should be commended, I think, for the way he ended that year as one of the few consistent, legit, weapons on offense for this team down the stretch.
I mean, the fact that we're even sitting here being like, hey, should Jake Debrusk take his trade request back? Should the Bruins hope to not trade him? I think says everything about it, because if you went back in November and told us that would be, talking about this in the future, you'd say we were crazy. So again, good second half by him, enough to kind of get him. It's like an 89 or an 88 overall, I guess. I mean, grade wise, I don't mean like NHL 2022. I don't think he's an 89 overall in NHL 2022. Don't worry, everybody. I'll let you handle the second line first. We can kind of go back and forth. Hall, Pastronok, what would you give each of them?
Yeah, so Hall, I'm going to go with a B. I think maybe that could be a little severe in terms of just kind of how he was for kind of that extended stretch in the second half. But you look at kind of the way he started, where it was what? I mean, if we did these grades back in December, he'd probably have like an F, right? I mean, in terms of just what the production was. Yeah, most guys would. That is also true. But I mean, all the credit to him for fitting in pretty well on that second line, really kind of being the final, the solution in terms of dealing with kind of the biggest issue on this lineup, right? In terms of that 2C spot without David Krejci. Obviously, Charlie Coyle wasn't working there. So he solved a lot of issues for this team in terms of a lot of headaches in terms of, fitting into that 2C spot. But again, you kind of look at the way his game tailed off again in the postseason. Should have been the 7th player award winner this year, Erik Haula, but still, I don't know if going into next year, especially if you want to contend, we'll see what happens. I don't know if Erik Haula can be your set 2C going forward. So I have him as a B. Taylor Hall I have as a B too, and I think you could probably make the argument it could be a B plus, just because Hall is such an interesting case, right? Because when he's, I think, paired with the right people and put in the right situation, I think he's a guy that can be an impact player, can be your best forward on plenty of nights, as a guy that can help drive a line. But if he's not in that best spot, or he doesn't have a center that plays to his strengths, or doesn't have like an elite finisher, then I think you kind of hit those lulls with him where it kind of leaves you a bit frustrated in terms of the lack of production or anything like that. So I gave him a B, but I think the buy-in from him has been encouraging. You saw kind of how he played with Pastronok. I think you have to keep that duo together, and whether it be, him being candid about working more on a cycle game or his efforts to improve his defensive game, I think he's still an important piece to this puzzle as the Bruins kind of look to that next core moving forward. So I give him a B. Then Pastronok, I give an A minus, which I think is probably due in large part to kind of that rough start that he had. I think it was 9 goals in 30 games. So, I mean, plenty of credit to him to finishing the year with 40 goals, right? And obviously it was a very, very trying year for David Pastronok, everything he kind of fought through and had to deal with. So, commendable for him to even just, the day-to-day grind of, being an NHL hockey player and dealing with that, with all that weighing on you, but then to also put out 40 goals, be, again, one of the few kind of consistent pieces for this team. Testament to kind of him and how he carries himself and, what he had to do to kind of get through this very difficult stretch. So I give him an A minus. Again, could be justified with giving him an A if you wanted to do that as well. But those are my second line grades.
Yeah, I give Pastronok an A solely kind of for, again, he 40 goals, but he also kind of he somehow found a way to get through what he went through this year, which was so trying and would have been awful for anybody, no matter the person. So I went with Pastronok for an A. Haula, I went with a B as well. Again, I thought that the fact that he was able to jump into that second line role, I know there was no production from him against the Hurricanes, but I'm not going to let that slip his grade too much. I mean, again, if he was nasty against the Hurricanes, you could probably even give him an A minus, like just the fact that he exceeded expectations in the sense that he was able to step in and be a second line center. But I think he's a kind of a gentleman's B. Good season out of him. Do I think he's your second line center going forward? I would hope not. I don't think that is a stable path to winning and success. I think it's a great stopgap the way it was this year. But I don't know if I don't think he's your guy going forward on that second line. Taylor Hall, I also gave a B. I gave Taylor Hall a B. Again, good, but I also look at a guy like Taylor Hall and I expect a little more. I mean, you remember him back in New Jersey. I know it was a season, but he was a huge play driver for them. He won the MVP. He was their guy. You'd like to see a little more of that out of Taylor Hall. And you saw that with Pastronok, but you also don't want to have to think, well, we got to put someone really good with Taylor Hall, because in reality, Taylor Hall should be, doing it himself, finding his ways to get production around him. So I was not, I thought he hit expectations, but I just was left wanting a little bit more out of him. So for me, I give him a B. Someone I worked with in Atlanta heard me say Bahamas and said, "Oh, you have a Boston accent." I said, "Oh, I don't think I do." Not
really even a word that has like a Boston accent behind it.
I don't think it is, because I was thinking like other ways.
That has an H in it.
Bahamas. Like I don't know how else you would say it.
Unless he thought you were saying like Bahaba. Like
Bahamas.
Maine.
Yeah,
No,
Bahama, Maine.
like Bar Harbor, Maine.
Yes, Bar Harbor.
And yes, and maybe
Bahama.
he thought that's what it was.
Yeah, maybe that, but I think he knew I was saying Bahamas. And he's like, oh, I'm like, how else do you say Bahamas? So that was interesting. That was very interesting. A lot of Southern accents down there, by the way. No Boston accents. Can you believe that? No Boston accents down there.
Just you, apparently.
Just me. I was just the one. It's actually funny. There was this walkway we were all walking on that goes around the city, and there was a girl in like an Al Horford is good shirt. So of course I was like, yo, damn right. And she's like, oh, thanks. And she like scurried away up like this like path off of the walking path. Like I thought like this creep. I'm like,
yeah.
You someone's in an Al Horford is good shirt. I'm saying something, especially in a different shout city.
Out. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, like I know it's like 9 o'clock at night, but like it that doesn't matter.
Celtics, man.
Celtics are the balls. Like, did you forget that?
Yes. I see it on my Instagram. I see it on my Instagram like stories 85 times for every game. Twitter,
same thing.
Yes.
Like all the Celtics are the balls. That is, I wonder who was I think Steve Buckley did a story on this a few years ago. Who the camera guy and who the guy was, and like what a shot that was. The fact that like, hey, 30 years later, that's going to be like the most shared video on social media when it comes to the Celtics. Anyways, back to Bruins stuff. Third line, Frederick, Coyle, and Smith. I don't know if this is the most controversial line. I think this might be the one where there's the most differences. I'll give Trent Frederick a C. And the reason I give him a C is, again, not impressed with him and what he brought, especially down the stretch. But the fact that he fit in, if you remember, think of how much we have we haven't trashed Trent Frederick, but our expectations were not very high. We didn't think he'd really ever even maybe make the lineup and contribute. And he did. He actually did. He fit in on that third line when they were really good from January through March. He was a solid part of that. I will give him it. Outside of that, stupid penalties, just kind of questionable offensive production, defensive stuff. Not a huge fan. That's why he gets a C. But again, he did fit in. Now, again, that's another one like Holla. Is he a long-term fit as the third line left winger? Probably not. I mean, I just think you have other options that you can go to there that can fit in better. But I give Trent Frederick a C. Charlie Coyle, I give a B-. Again, I think he pulled his weight in terms of point production in most aspects. I still am, you still kind of just given what he makes, expect some second line production. And again, he just never fit with Taylor Hall. So again, the production was there always, but that fit wasn't. And I think, I do kind of hold that against him because you do expect him to produce. So I give him a B-. I give Craig Smith a C-. Again, just the production wasn't there for most of the year. When it was great, but that wasn't that long of a time that the production was there. Completely dried up in the playoffs. And again, just, the fact that people are talking about trading him now, I think kind of says all you need to know. Because again, that's a guy who is supposed to be a reliable scorer and really wasn't this year. So again, I give him a C-. So yeah, not high marks for the third line. I think if they'd done better in the playoffs, it would have been a much different scenario. But if the fact that it was kind of very short-lived, and then they dried up at the end of the season too. Yeah. So it was sort of just, again, short-lived and unfortunate for the Bruins.
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, Frederick, I give a C-. Again, I think you have to be encouraged by that kind of stretch that whole line had, where they seemed like they all had gelled together, and Frederick was kind of playing the way he needs to play, which again, you don't have to be this goon, right? You don't have to be this guy, as Bruce Cassidy says, you don't have to be a goof out there, which again, you can be effective when you're not chasing, conflict. You're initiating kind of that, those post whistle shoves off of a hard check, or just playing, getting your nose dirty and those things like that. And there was far too many times where I think, whether it's as you said, the ill-timed penalties, or just, putting yourself in a bad spot, chasing a hit or what have you, where he found himself in the doghouse. And again, we can talk maybe later on about whether or not Cassidy had too short of a leash for a guy like Frederick. But when, you see how effective he was for that month, 5-week stretch there where he's on that third line and playing effective hockey, and then to kind of once again fall down to those same bad habits down the final end of the season and in the playoffs, just very frustrating. It's a guy that, again, I don't know if he's going to be beyond a bottom six guy, but you expect at least at this point for him at his age and who's been through it to be more of a guy that knows what his identity is. And it still seems like he's dealing with kind of that identity crisis in terms of what he needs to do out there on the ice. So you hope he solves that. Coyle, I give a B- too. I think a lot of it's probably influenced by, that lack of production down the stretch and that contract. And even though like him and Taylor Hall didn't really fit that well, Coyle was still productive at the start of the year in that top 6 role. I think he had like 14 points in the first 21 games. And, give credit to him that after a dreadful 2020-21 season, he did look a lot better in terms of how he needs to play. You just wish more of that production follows. I think at this point you have to just accept, what Coyle is at this point. Where is he a 2C? No, but he could be a very effective 3C if the right pieces are in place, which guys making $5.25 million probably doesn't make Bruins fans happy, but I think that is what he is. And I think in the right role, he can still be a valuable piece of this team, but you just have to, I think, put the right pieces around him there. And then like you, Smith, I gave a C-. Again, for a guy that kind of look at his baseline numbers, right? He had 15 plus goals once again, 35 plus points, but a lot of that was also off of a stretch where he had 9 goals and 12 points in 11 games. So the remaining 63 games he played was 24 points. Not what you want out of a guy that, again, he's not a guy you're expecting to have 25, 30 goals, but he should be a 15, 20, a more consistent guy out there as opposed to kind of being super hot and cold, especially in that third line where he should have been viewed as kind of the finisher on that group, right? You got a puck possession center and Coyle, a guy that can forecheck, and Frederick needs someone to put the puck in the net. And far too often, I think Smith, whether due to injuries or what have you, just didn't live up to the bill there. So that's my grades for the third line.
Yeah. Again, I as I said, just the expectations and the streaks just were not great for giving high marks. We'll roll through the fourth line quickly.
Yeah.
Foligno, Nosek, Lazar, what do you give them?
Let's see. So Lazar, I gave a B+ in terms of what his role was. Again, guy that gets not a lot of offensive zone time for the course from both fourth liners and Bruce Cassidy's system, but still was effective when he was out there, threw his weight around in the forecheck, played kind of the style of play you want out of a fourth liner, but also had 16 points, career high 8 goals. Again, probably priced himself out of the market for the Bruins, but did what you need a guy like him to do as kind of the driver there in the fourth line. Foligno, maybe I'm being generous, gave him a D-. You could make the case that he deserves an F in terms of what the pay was. You don't pay close to $4 million a year for a guy that has 2 goals. Again, great dude. Bruins love him in the room, but you still need more from a guy if you're allocating that much cap space. Then Nosek, it's kind of a tough one. I gave him a C-, which might be a little harsh, but I think for a guy that, again, he's not signed to be a 20 goal scorer, but as someone who you signed to be a consistent presence in there. Yes, he's good on the PK, defensively accountable, but still, you need a guy to finish on that fourth line as well, kind of like Smith in that role higher up the lineup. And no goals after January 2nd, it's not going to cut it.
I'm disappointed in your Nosek grade because that's probably maybe the hardest grade from the forwards, and we had the exact same grade.
Damn it,
I had C- for Nosek too. I thought, again, just as what you said, like the role was fine, but you would have liked to see some more goals, and he was snake bitten. I mean, that dude like couldn't have put a puck in an empty net. So that was him. I gave Nick Foligno a D solely because I just think like once you get below back in like grades in school, like once you get below like a 65, it's still just like not good. You didn't pass. It wasn't good. And then Curtis Lazar, I give a B-. Again, I think, played his role well, did his job. Did what he had to do. I just didn't find the need to do a B or a B+. I'm hustling a little bit to get to the defenseman because this is, I think, an interesting one. I would be shocked if we did not have the same grade for Charlie Mcavoy. I think I imagine we both have an A+ for this.
Yes.
I was gonna say, if anyone, Charlie McAvoy's nasty this year. I think, I think if, for Bruins fans, I think for the Bruins, he made every step you wanted him to take and more, I think this year. I think he's going to be the Norris Trophy voting has not been let out yet. I would imagine he'll be 4th. That's where he should be at least. I think just the steps in his game offensively, I think he was even better against top talent this year. I think he was even better at transitioning the puck out of his own zone. You saw him on the power play more. I know the power play had some issues at times, but that was more when Pastronok went down. That wasn't really like McAvoy's wrongdoings. So McAvoy to me is an A+. As for his partner, I will go with Hampus Lindholm. I'm not going to go with Grizzly on this. I gave Lindholm a B+, solely because I just didn't think I didn't see enough of him, and that's nothing like that's not his fault. But for me, I give Lindholm a B+. I think he was terrific. That top pair of him and McAvoy looks legitimate. I think I think there's a lot of uncertainty on this team. The fact that they can rely on a legitimate top pairing in Lindholm and McAvoy is very, very good for years to come. So what do you give both? I know you gave McAvoy an A+. What do you give Lindholm? And you can even do the second pairing if you'd like.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, McAvoy A+, best player on the team. Should have been a Norris Trophy top 3 finisher maybe one day, but legit franchise defenseman. Lindholm, I'm going to give an A-. Again, you could make the case, I think, for a B+ just because there hasn't had a lot of tape out on him. But I think you look at what he brings to the team in terms of the ability to log heavy minutes, how he plays with McAvoy, which was a great development, transition game. And I think one thing you didn't see enough from him, again, small sample size, but in terms of the tangible offense, I think he can generate. There's, we talk a lot about transition and how it's, sometimes it's the first pass that is the most important thing to orchestrating a chance. But I think a guy like Lindholm, who also is, great in the offensive zone, has a pretty good shot that you didn't see translate that much during his time here so far. But I imagine that's going to be a point of emphasis for this team. And a guy like Lindholm is probably going to be relied on heavily for that. So I think all around a great addition to this decor. So I'll give him an A-. Then it gets tough, right? I guess we'll do Grizzly Callow, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Grizzly, I'll give a B-. I think you can make a case for a B maybe, but I think it's tough because he's one of those guys that was dealing with a dislocated shoulder for most of, from January onward. And I think probably the postseason leaves a bit of a sour taste in most Bruins fans' mouths in terms of what Grizzly brings. But I still think he's a net positive for this team when he's playing his game. Still very good in transition, still can impact the game positively when he has the puck on his stick or when he's moving it with authority, but kind of a lost season, I guess you would maybe say, for Grizzly, where as I think he's been the apple of the eye.
That was common on the back end, by the way, lost season.
Yeah, exactly. Again, he's a guy that has usually been a consistent presence. First kind of a blip, I think maybe of a season for him, but you hopefully after shoulder surgery, he gets a clean bill of health, whether it be further down the depth chart where he's maybe sheltered a bit more, or maybe it's, again, put him back with McAvoy when needed and get the best out of that pairing as well. I still think there's a place for him on this decor, which, again, we'll see what happens because that decor could be all reshuffled pretty soon. So,
yeah.
And then, I guess then we do Callow. Ooh, I'll do C. Not his best year. I think in terms of you look at kind of the factors that led to some of the disappointing returns for this team. Some of them you look at injury, you look at, new pieces and keep, spots in the lineup, but Callow kind of taking a step back this year in terms of, especially after signing that contract, tough hit for the team. That's not to say that I think he's, washed up or is a guy that's going to keep on kind of struggling with, moving the puck or making some tough D-zone miscues, but I think he's still a guy that hopefully just burn the tape from this year. And, whether it's another year removed from kind of that rough concussion-filled season or what have you, that he can kind of refocus and get back into a groove. Because, again, he's not going to be a offensive conduit, not going to be a flashy player, but you just need more of the smart, simple plays that, he was known to do and really kind of anchor that second pair, which didn't do nearly enough this season.
Got to play more like a prick, as Bruce Cassidy said. That was Carlo's thing. Never played enough like a prick. And again, you even see like some of those missed net front coverages, especially against the Hurricanes, was a legit issue. That is why I give Brandon Carlo a C-. I know, low grade. That's what I give him. I just think that the expectations are so much higher and he isn't hitting them. I know there's injury issues. There's concussion history. I still think he's just not hitting his expectations. And you need that. You really need that. Going forward, because that is going to be an impossible contract to deal, because now most teams know that he's struggling and most teams know they're not going to pay $4.1 million for that. Grizzly, I give a C+. I still would love to see him fit in on the power play a little bit better. And again, I just think from an offensive standpoint, I know obviously, the unfair thing for him was always next Torrey Krug, when he just wasn't. Like, they're such different players, but I would like to see a little more offense out of him. And just, again, like him with McAvoy is not a C+, but him with Carlo, I would put more as a C+. So a little bit more out of him next season, I think. But again, I understand giving him, sort of a B B minus in that range. I still think he's an important part of this team, as you said. So, I think hopefully he's a bit better next year and not as, gets fixed up after his injuries from this season. Third pairing, Derek Fulbert. I'll say Fulbert and Conor Clifton. And we can do Mike Riley as well, actually, in this. We'll group Mike Riley in. I give Derek Fulbert a B. I think, again, like the offensive side wasn't there, but never really was. I don't think I think they kind of gave him unfair expectations of like, oh, you're going to be the next number one. You're going to be the next number one guy. I give him a B because, again, he stepped up towards, the second half of the season and in the playoffs as being, just embraced his role. He's a legit shutdown defenseman. He can block a lot of shots. He's good in his own zone. So for me, I give him a B. I know that might be a little high, just given the fact that he never really panned out into a number one or, a number one left shot defenseman. But again, I didn't understand why the Bruins were wanting that, or not wanting that, but thought that, given that he literally had never been that in his career. So it was a little unfair on their part. I'll give Conor Clifton a B minus. Just, again, like stepped up in the playoffs, did his job, played his role. So I give him a B minus. Mike Riley, I give a C minus. I give Mike Riley a C minus. I know that's a low grade, but again, just given the new contract, given how he played at the end of last season, or actually now that would be 2020, 2021, which is 2 seasons ago. I just think the expectations were more for him. They weren't there. So those are my grades for the final 3 defensemen.
Yeah, I do. I'll go with Fulbert and Clifton. I both gave B minuses. Fulbert, I think definitely, redeemed himself a bit in the postseason with, his PK ability. I think he's still a very strong penalty killer. I do think, I think was put in a wrong role to start the year. He's not top pairing guy, even when he's with a legit, impact talent like Mcavoy. Just put him on the third pair and leave him there and he'll do his job, right? Like that's, I think, where he best benefits further down the lineup. And then Clifton, I think, is a guy that, again, you kind of know what you're getting at this point. There'll be stretches where you're like, whoa, Clifton, I think, is going to elevate his game. And then he has like a 3-4 game stretch. You're like, oh, might have to get sit for a couple of games. So again,
yes,
there's value in what he brings when he's on kind of playing to his strengths. Very effective, especially in a third pairing role, but kind of what you see is what you get with Clifton. Then Riley, I'll give a C. I think when he's on playing his game, he's still effective. It's just you didn't see it nearly enough. And also, I think in terms of, misfortune per 60 minutes, if that's a stat, every time there was like one missed read with Riley out there, it was always in the back of the net. Like every time there was, it always unraveled, which is not to say I'm not trying to cut him some slack, but also, every time something went wrong, anything could have gone wrong, went wrong for Riley. So I'd imagine, I don't know if he's going to be on the team next year, but really disappointing year, especially with how he played last season.
Misfortune per 60. If we start a hockey statistics websites, that'll be the stat. Goaltending, the big goaltending. We'll each give one for each. So I'll start with Sweeman because he did start more playoff games. I will say B plus. Jeremy Sweeman was good this year, especially after Tuukka Rask retired. He was insane. He won February Rookie of the Month. He was good in the first half of the year. Definitely took him some time to get acclimated, as we kind of expected. And you kind of expected that. So I don't have a huge issue with that. And given the way that he played in the postseason, given the way that he played down the stretch, I give him a B plus. I think there's definitely room to grow. There's a lot of potential there. So I'm encouraged by what I see. What would you give Jeremy Sweeman? And then you can also give Linus Ullmark.
Yeah, I give Sweeman a B plus. I think, as you said, for a rookie going into the year, quite the statement to kind of seize that starting role for this team. And again, had some lows, as I think everyone expected in a rookie goaltender, but when he was on, he was locked in. And I think when you see how he played, fighting through things in the postseason, his poise, all very encouraging signs. There weren't any red flags that you kind of look ahead. And for a team that has a lot of uncertainty going forward, one guy that shouldn't really scare you is a guy in Sweeman and how he can build off of this year. So I gave him a B plus. Ullmark, I'll give a B. I think, there was some times where I think he kind of got a lot of unnecessary hate in terms of, he wasn't Sweeman and had a rough start to the year. But there was plenty of times where, whether it be in late November, December, where the team was kind of scuttling and he upped his game to then at the final.
There was that game in Colorado.
Yes,
they lost it, but they were only in it because of him.
Yeah, so there was that stretch there right before kind of the new year where he kind of really built them out, and then down the stretch, the regular season where he seized kind of the starting role in the playoffs. Like he elevated his game at key times for this team. So is he the one, your set franchise goalie? No, but in terms of what he brings, I still think that tandem in net is something you can build off of going forward. So I give him a B.
We had the exact same grades in that. I had a B for Allmark as well. Again, I also look at, as you said, he gets hate because of the contract. People say they should have got somebody better. But the reality is every time there was an issue in net, every time Sweeman was going through a lull, Allmark was consistent. I mean, he was kind of, again, like the Moneyball quote, first one through the wall always gets bloodied. He was always kind of the first one through, especially in the postseason, taking the brunt of those first 2 games against Carolina. So to me, I think he's valuable. I do. I just think he's consistent. He's good. He's also got some potential. Like that's a guy who, again, in Buffalo always showed the underlying numbers always showed he was really good. And he was solid this year. Like I don't have anything like I never thought like what a waste of money that guy is. And I think a lot of people did think he was. And I understand it. They look at that at face value. They think he should have been, the next Tuukka Rask. But the reality is he never was supposed to be. It was supposed to be kind of platooned as they did, and it worked out well. So those are our grades for the year. Those are, we're Mr. Ryan and I guess Mr. Marinofsky, Professor Ryan, I guess Professor Marinofsky.
Hell no.
I feel like if I was a teacher, I'd want to just be called Evan. Just call me by my name. Don't call me by my last name.
You're the cool sub.
Yeah, the cool sub. The
guy who brings a TV card in, just watches like Coach Kata instead of teaching like covalent bonds. One thing I've noticed, by the way, since a lot of my friends have graduated and gone into teaching, a lot of times when the teacher would bring in like a TV in elementary school or do silent reading time, they might have been hungover. I'm not gonna sit there and throw out allegations. They might have been hungover. And we had no idea. They just love watching Coach Kata. So, I mean, no disrespect. Great movie, but they loved watching Magic School Bus. That was their favorite thing to watch on like a Tuesday morning. Loved my teachers, by the way, in elementary school. I'm not disrespecting them in any way. I'm just saying Framingham public schools. Oh yes, the best, as good as they get. But that was kind of like a realization I had since my friends have graduated. Some have become teachers. Anyways, Conor, where can the people find your stuff? And you're also doing some Celtic stuff that people should look forward to as well. Yes, all that stuff you can find over at bostonsportsjournal.com. As you said, Evan, I'll have some Celtic stuff as they head over to the NBA Finals and play the Warriors. And then, again, it's the off season for the Bruins. We're going to have continued content, whether it's grades, looking ahead to free agent targets, trades, all that good stuff, all over at bostonsportsjournal.com. So subscribe at BSJ. Want to follow me on Twitter? You can do that at ConorRyan_93. Go do all that. For CLNS Media, I'm Evan Marinofsky. You Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.